I consider myself an artist, and my process for everything that I do is more of an artistic process than an academic or commercial process. It's usually involves a lot of chaos. It usually involves a lot of angst, and somehow, some way, something beautiful comes out at the end of it. And so I actually relate quite well to artists and performers, and I sort of feel a kindred spirit. When Jen and I go out for dinner, we talk about all kinds of things, and very often we talk about creativity, what makes us creative, and the conversations that we end up having are insightful for both of us. And the last time we went out for dinner, we said, well, this is unfair. We should really let others in on this. And so it's actually very exciting for me. You know, I spend so much time talking to business people. They're nice. But you know, coming back and doing things with artists is much more my home. So this is actually a joy for me to do. And so I think the goal of today, I'm sure I'll wax on, but the goal of today is I'm here for you to answer questions. We can talk about what creative process is, what it means to be an artist in today's day and age. You know, I have gripes about some of it. And hopefully we can all learn something and be better off by the end of it. So I'm here to serve. I'll tell you I'll just start off with one frustration I have about the arts today. I guess two frustrations. Okay, three frustrations. Let's share two frustrations. One frustration is the concept of patronage has gone away. You know, Beethoven and Mozart didn't pay their own bills. Somebody else saw talent in them, and somebody else paid their bills. Yeah, they did some teaching, but let's be honest, that's not what paid the bills. And they had patrons who paid their bills so that they would produce. And we have the symphonies and the sonatas and the operas that we have from them because others wanted to invest in that. That was the product. That was the return on that investment, the ability to contribute to society, to the arts. What I lament is that the arts have unfortunately too much become business, where the investment is to get money back, you know, rather than to produce something that is so necessary and beautiful that it actually contributes to society at large. I miss the concept of patronage, and I would love to bring something like that back. Now, I guess we have grants and things. It's not quite the same. I literally mean that an artist with talent that others recognize has talent gets a salary, that you don't work. You don't have a survival job. Your survival job is the patronage. I know. So that's one lamentation. The other one is, as I mentioned, that that too much of, I'm okay with a portion of art being business. There's no problem with that. My problem is it out of balance? Has too much art become business? You could say the same thing of hospitals. You could say the same thing of universities, where universities too much have forgotten that their responsibility is to educate students, not get donations, right? Hospitals have forgotten that their responsibility is to take care of doctors and nurses and staff so that the doctors and nurses and staff can take care of the patients. It's not how much money can we bring in and how many famous doctors can we brag about. Somebody once told me recently that they introduced me to I think it was a heart surgeon or some sort of famous surgeon, and they said, you know, they rate these surgeons on how many of their patients die. You know, that's how they keep track of who's the best. And he said, you're very lucky to meet a surgeon here who has one of the lowest mortality rates of all surgeons in his field. And I said, oh, I would never see him. And my friend said, why not? I said, because he passes on all the difficult cases so he can make sure that his patients live. And I can guarantee you that's what happens. I can guarantee you that some of the most difficult cases, the best surgeons do not take for fear of upsetting their metrics, upsetting their reputations, right? And unfortunately, some of the most important cases are being passed up by some of the best surgeons. Now, of course, that's not in general, but I can guarantee you it's happening. The minute you start attaching numbers to things like medical care or education or the arts, necessarily each of those things will suffer. I lament that universities advertise themselves by bragging about the average salary of their graduating students. How about the contribution to society of their average student? You know, so anything that I can do to help ease the way for you as you go on the journey as an artist, which is and I hold you in the same esteem that I hold the military. I have a really big soft spot in my heart for people who undertake a career of service, where sacrifice is a large part of what you're expected to do, and few, if any, go into the business with the expectation of getting rich, right? And I think artists and military are very, very similar, that it is, if you get it right, it is an act of service. It is an act of service. If you think it's about fame and fortune, I wish you nothing but luck, but that's also the difference maybe between the film and a movie. Like, one can stand up as art and is hopefully entertaining. The other one is just entertainment and hopefully is also artistic. So it's not a better or worse thing, but just it's about awareness of the lifestyle and career and the kind of artist's journey that you want to go on. That's my preamble.
That's a pretty great preamble. What you just said reminded me of a conversation we had once, and I'm going to try to jog your memory, about what actually defines art. And you were using an example of something that is in a gallery versus something. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so.
Jog.
Yeah. So if we can recognize things, we must be able to define them, right? Things that are recognizable are definable. And when people say art defies definition, then how do you know it's art? And so I challenged myself to define art, right? To come up with a working definition. It's not subjective, it has to be objective. It's nothing to do with art we like or don't like. It's to do with art. And I think I have a working definition. I've been testing it for years, and so far it holds up. And it boils down to three things. There's three tests that something must pass to be called art, right? And I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll go through each of them. One is intention, one is display, and the last is reception, right? To recept. Is the verb. It's not. Okay, so, and the test that I gave myself, right, was things like Robert Mapplethorpe, okay? Robert Mapplethorpe took unbelievably beautifully shot pornography. So what makes it art and not pornography? And what makes, something in a pornographic magazine pornography and not art? So that's where I put boundaries over here to make it more difficult. And so intention matters. Intention is sometimes the intention of the person who produces the work, but not always, right? So let's say that the intention of, let's say, a pornographic magazine, the intention is not art, the intention is a masturbatory aid, right? And so it immediately fails the first test. But what if a curator from the MoMA decides to display 10 years worth of Playboy covers? The intention has now changed. It wasn't the intention of the photograph, but now it has been converted by the curator, right? So it has intention, not by the artist per se, not by the creator, but by the person who intends it to be art. Then is display. It must be displayed in an area that is consistent with the intention. So we're not displaying it in one of those dime theaters, we're displaying it in a place of artistic reputation, the Museum of Modern Art. And then it must be received as such. People come and say, interesting. And then come up with all kinds of nonsense about what the interpretation of what the meaning is, right? So like Dada, if you know Dadaists, what if you take a piece of driftwood in nature is just a piece of driftwood. That's all it is. And if someone recognizes its beauty and points to it and says, isn't that beautiful? It's still just nature. It's not yet art. But if somebody says that it has qualities that I intend to display separate from its natural environment, and I remove the piece of driftwood, I now have intention. I then display it in the museum, and people come and look at it and say, isn't that amazing, right? So you have intention, you have display, and you have reception. Which means, if you paint and you after every painting, you put the paintings under your bed and they're never seen, you're not an artist. You're just a painter, right? Though you may have intention, there's no display and there's no reception. If you're a poet and you sit there and write the most fantastic poems and show them to no one but your diary, you may have intention, but there is no display and there's no reception. It must pass all three for it to become art. You are simply a writer of poems. You are a poet, but you're not yet an artist, right? You can display it in your own home. That's fine. You can just hang it up or read your poems to your friends. Totally fine. And your friends go, that's an amazing poem. Great. Can I read you my new poem? Yes, you can. That's where it becomes art. It's nothing to do with the quality. It can be bad art. But it makes Jackson Pollock defendable, whether you like it or not. It makes Robert Mapplethorpe. And by the way, if we take Mapplethorpe and put it in a gay porn mag, right? It has now ceased to be art. It is now beautifully shot pornography because the intention, display, and reception has completely changed. So that's my working definition of art.
I saw a question over here with Kelsey.
So many questions.
Lots of gasping. Yes.
And I'm going to repeat the question back for our viewers.
Or either one of us.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it.
I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Could it then be argued that human beings are works of art if we view the world as a stage?
If there's intention, display, and reception, sure.
So
So performance artists or somebody who, I think to say the world is a stage is a little too abstract. You know, that's like the world is a museum.
yeah,
Yeah, too big,
okay.
too big. So can human beings be works of art? If there is an intention to display a human being as a work of art, if somebody displays it as a work of art, and if it's received as a work of art, like maybe the Bodies exhibition, you could argue, you know,
Yes.
or somebody who chooses to do some avant-garde piece where they sit in a chair for 12 hours in the Whitney Museum, which has been done, then sure, why not?
And do
But
these-
not all people at all times. Not all poems at all times. Not all paintings at all times.
Heard. Do these three things have to go in this specific order? Is it possible that like the reception or the display is there, but the intention is not aligned, so that's why it's not.
Somebody had to intend for it to be art before it was displayed. So I don't have a good argument that it has to be in the order, but it seems to be a chronology to it. First you have to intend it or make it, then you have to show it to someone, and somebody has to go, you know. So I think it's more practical than it is philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'd love to hear what you have to say to this. I feel like as an artist myself, I sometimes have to discard that third part
Mm-hmm.
because my intention is there
Mm-hmm.
and I'm putting it out there and I can't be dependent on whether or not it's been received in the way that I intended
Mhm.
or if the reception part is there.
So remember, the question was, as an artist, you have intention, you have display, but can I be confident of the way it's received? So it's not about how necessarily the people receive it, but is it a place where it should be received as such? So if you put on a play in a theater, it can be filled with people who be like, this isn't art, right? You can take, my grandfather to look at a Jackson Pollock and be like, that's not art. It's a balance thing, That's one person's, I'm trying to remove the subjective quality out of it. Yeah. Yes.
Well, so then is the reception contingent upon the...
We can talk about other things, by the way, besides my
Okay.
definition of art.
I actually was a little confused by the reception aspect
Yeah.
of it too. Is that just then sort of like a passive third thing, or...
So I think the part of it the reason I added reception is because, to me, art is like a gift. If you have capacity, if you have talent, if you have grit and hard work and you want to produce, gifts are supposed to be given. So what's the point of giving a gift if no one gets it, right? What's the point of producing a symphony if no one gets to hear it? So I think reception is important to give the art point, meaning as opposed to pointless. Otherwise you're just decorating your home. Now, we could have a debate whether I'm receiving it myself, right? So we could definitely debate that. But I think and maybe this is just the romantic in me, it has to be enjoyed. And maybe one person is fine. Maybe if you hang it in your own home and it's just for you, that's fine too. But I think art has to be enjoyed. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, it's just therapy. You know, I'm just painting for therapy, and we all do things like that. You know, art has to have another human being involved. To me, art is about a relationship, right? You can't call yourself a romantic or somebody who chooses to love another if nobody ever feels your love. You know, I think art is a type of language, right? I know people who are the world's worst communicators when it comes to their emotions when you have a conversation with them. I've dated some of them. But given the opportunity to write, it's magical. And the feelings pour out on the page in an eloquence like I've never seen. And as everyone here knows, great art in some way, shape, or form is always personal or semi-autobiographical. Right? It's too hard to write pure fiction. You know, we put ourselves in it because it gives it a sense of reality in it, and it's what makes us passionate for the subject that we're tackling. I know dancers who, you know, you meet them and they're like this, but as soon as they start dancing, you realize it's all there. So art is language, and if no one hears you, you know, if a tree falls in the woods, you know, if no one hears what you're saying, is it worth saying anything? They're just thoughts. So what's the point of writing a play that never gets shown? It's just a thought, you know? It's just an intention. So yeah, no, I think it must be shared. It's one of the ways in which people communicate. Language is obviously the primary one. And beautiful language is art.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I need to set a little context first. So several years ago, I was at the National Young Arts Foundation I was working specifically with theater artists, but they are an organization that I've talked to you about before. They have artists in the literary arts, the performing arts, the visual arts. Everything under an artistic umbrella is represented in there, the best and the brightest of the next generation of artists. So the absolute genius artist, Bill T. Jones, came down to do an interdisciplinary workshop. So we had kids of every single artistic discipline represented. And he opened by saying, if you are a creative artist, raise your hand. So of course, all hands went up. And then he said, if you are a dancer, a singer, an actor, director, put your hands down. And you could kind of feel the room go like, what the heck is going on here? And then he says, your hand should be up if you are a poet, if you are a filmmaker, if you're a choreographer, a composer, a playwright, a painter. Now, raise your hand if you're an interpretive artist. And dancers, raise your hand. Singers, raise your hand. Actors, raise your hand. Instrumentalists, vocalists. And you could kind of feel this aha moment happen. So that's really the question I have for you is when you are an interpretive artist, as most people in this room are, not sure about you guys at home, but in this room we've got mostly people who interpret someone else's work. So when you're looking for opportunities to find collaborators, someone whose work that you are going to help bring to life, do you have any thoughts about what that relationship is like and how to do it in a meaningful way?
Yeah, so I went to see a play with a friend of mine who is an actor, and the play was awful. I mean, a train wreck. The script was awful, the directing was awful. I mean, it was an absolute train wreck. And the applause was kind of like, you know, except for the parents, they loved it. And I said to my friend, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for the actors that had to be poorly directed with this poor script. You know, and I said, do they know? She says, of course they know. And she said, but do not feel sorry for them. Because as actors, it is their responsibility, despite the poor directing and despite the poor script, to still bring something of themselves to bear, something personal that we should be able to say, what a bad script, what poor directing, but my goodness, what a performance, right? And so I was told not to feel sorry for actors in bad plays. So the question goes now, the question you asked was about collaboration, right? Should any of those actors have taken the part? Now, of course, if you're going to take a part because you need an extra cash, little extra cash, or you want to get a little extra practice, then you have to do so, I think, knowing I'm doing this for the money, or I'm doing this just to keep my skills sharp, but I'm under no illusion that this is something that I connect with, but I'm going to do the best that I can. And then don't lie to yourself, you know? The other problem is don't do that too often, because that'll just destroy any passion that you have for your medium, right? And I think, and we've talked about this, which is any artist, any person, but especially artists, have to know their why. You have to know why you're showing up in the first place. And you have to be able to talk about it. Because if you talk about it, things happen. People go, I like you, right? Now, you may not get the part, but you're more likely to find people who want to work with you, even if you're not the most talented one who auditioned. This is my career, by the way, right? When I learned to talk about what I believed, I didn't talk about the things I've done. I didn't talk about the parts I've had or the shows I've been in or who trained me or the schools I went to, resume, resume, resume. I learned to talk about what I believed. And some people thought it was cheesy. They didn't call me back. Good. And some people went, that's great. And I was not the most talented, not the most experienced, not the best at my field, but because they stood for or believed in what I stood for, they wanted to work with me. They would rather work with someone who understood them, who got them, more than somebody who would just take orders and do exactly what they wanted, regardless of facility, right? Now, you have to have some facility, of course, you know. There has to be some level of talent. We're not talking about, you know, all why and no what. You know, you gotta bring the goods as well. But you don't necessarily have to be the best. Great producers, great directors, we know what they stand for. We're drawn to their work. You can throw out the name of a director. Oh, I love their work. Well, their last 3 movies sucked. Yeah, that's okay. You know, it's like we all have our, like I love, Guillermo del Toro. Just love how, now I don't like all his movies. I think some of them are not that good. I think some of them are brilliant. But I like the way he views the world. I want to see it when it comes out. And the fact is, because I know what he stands for and I know how he sees the world, I'm very patient with the fact that he doesn't always get it right. Right? So I'm a huge modern dance lover. Like, that's the thing I love. And I don't go to the Joyce anymore because everything that they have on their stage is good. It's good. Everything is safe to me. They put things on their stage that's good. They sell tickets. Nothing's bad. And nothing's great. It's all good. I don't go anymore. I go to BAM a lot. I have seen things that have profoundly changed my view of the world, and I have walked out of more things at BAM. Literally, I'm like, I'm done. And my friend's like, you can't. I'm like, we can. You know? I have walked out of so many things at BAM, and yet I continue to go and continue to go and I continue to go because I know what they stand for. That's my preference. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's my preference. That I would rather take the risk of walking out, knowing that I might get moved in a way that I've never experienced before, more than just go and have a nice night out and see something that I know is good. Right? And I think that goes for our careers as well. You know? Which is, if you choose to be the kind of artist that stands for something, that you want to be yourself and bring yourself into everything that you do, you will get fewer parts. You will. The parts you get will move you in a way that most artists will not get moved. Or you can bend and manipulate yourself a little bit and sort of be a little bit more of what they want and play their role. And even though you don't really buy into it, it's a part and I want to be an actor, I want to be a performer, I'm going to do what they want. You will absolutely get more parts, without a doubt. You can arguably have a better career. But will you be profoundly moved as an artist? The odds are lower. It's not, I can't say never, it's just the odds are lower. It's not better or worse. It is simply the decision on how you choose to manage or lead your own career. Both are acceptable, right? One means you get to use your facility a lot. One means you get to work a lot. One means you might be able to do only your art and actually make a living. One means that you're going to be meeting a lot of people, and the odds are that you will connect with somebody at some point. Or you choose this route, which is much more difficult and is fraught with much more risk and much more struggle, but you become known for the thing that you are. And it's a choice. And I think the mistake that most artists that I meet, especially performing artists, where this constant audition machine, right? I think they try and play both. And I don't think you can be yourself and then also play the part that they want you to play. I don't think you can. I think that's impossible. I think that's where the stress lies, where you think you can play both sides of the coin. I think that's where it becomes depressing. And I think that's where it sucks the soul out. When you trick yourself to think that you can have both. Because you can't. It doesn't exist on any planet. You just got to make a choice. Now, you can make a choice halfway. You can change directions. But there has to be a path that is chosen, and you find confidence in that path. It may be difficult, but it doesn't suck the soul out of it, you know? It doesn't become depressing. It just becomes difficult. And that's okay. Difficult is fine. But I think you have to make a choice and the kind of career you want. And again, it's not good or bad, right or wrong. They're simply choices. Like, there's nothing wrong with Joyce. There's nothing wrong with Joyce. Joyce sells a lot of tickets. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a choice to live on these extremes versus these extremes. This is very balanced. This is very balanced. And it's like entrepreneurs versus people who get jobs in corporations. Like, there's no right or wrong or good or bad. You know, entrepreneurs experience highs that people in a job will never experience. They also experience lows that people in a job will never experience. People in companies who take jobs with stability, and your highs are not that high, but your lows are not that low. You know? They're both balanced. But the point is, you can't have one without the other. You can't have this. You can only have this. So you can't choose to want this and this. It just doesn't work that way. You get this or you get this. And it's the same thing as I'm talking about here. You can have this as a creative career, or you can have this as a creative career. And then you prepare yourself for you know, it's like people with curly hair want straight hair and people with straight hair want curly hair. It's the same thing. These people will always complain that, why can't I ever get that? And these people complain, I can never get a job. You're going to be stressed no matter what. Focus on the thing that you're getting, because that's the choice you made, right? I'd much rather you focus on the thing you are pursuing rather than the thing you're missing. And so this idea of affirmative thinking, positive thinking, is essential for all people, but I think it's especially essential for artists. And there's a very, very simple biological reason for it, which is the human brain cannot comprehend the negative. It is incapable. Yes, it's true. I'll give you an example.
I believe you.
Okay? No, I'll give you an example. You don't have to believe me. I'll prove it. Okay? The human brain cannot comprehend the negative. You ready? Don't think of an elephant. Ah. Yeah, I know. You can't tell the human brain not to do something, right? And so what happens is we very often reinforce things when we put things in the negative, right? I can't get apart. I can't get apart. I can't get apart, right? Or I can't do this versus I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this, right? And it's such a huge thing to convert things into the affirmative. You're supposed to do it with children as well. We're supposed to say, instead of saying to children, don't eat on the couch, we're supposed to say, eat at the table. Right? We tell people what we want them to do, not what we don't want to do. Pilots know this, right? It is well known in the pilot community that when you tell a pilot, don't hit the obstacle, they'll hit the obstacle. Because what they're doing is focusing on the obstacle. Skiers know this. If you ever seen skiers go through trees, do you know how they do that? It's very easy. It's actually surprisingly easy. If you go through trees on skis and you go, don't hit a tree, don't hit a tree, don't hit a tree, guess what you're watching? You're only looking at trees. All you're doing is seeing trees. You don't understand how anyone can ski with all these trees, right? As opposed to follow the snow, follow the path, follow the path. The only thing you see is the path. Skiers know this. If you say don't hit a tree, you'll hit a tree. You won't be able to find a path because all you see is millions of trees. If you say only follow the path, you actually don't see any trees. There's actually very sparse trees. There's plenty of path. There's plenty of snow. It's the same thing for you. If you focus on the obstacles, all you will see is obstacles. If you focus on the path through the trees, all you will see is path through the trees. It's your choice how you choose to perceive your own career. It's literally perspective. It's literally perspective.
Simon, while you're talking about perspective, I was reminded of something that you said to me about actors who are always looking for the next job, are always playing this short game, finite game.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk about that, because the concept of being in it for the long haul is so important.
Yep. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with grit and stick-with-itness. It's a more philosophical concept, right? I've become very, very interested in the idea of playing in games that have no finish lines, right? Some games have finish lines, right? Baseball, football, right? Getting a part is a finish line. You audition. There's a beginning, middle, and end. There's rehearsal and practice. There's showing up for the audition, and you either win or you lose, and then it's over. It's over, right? That is finite. But one's career is infinite. There's no end. It's like our lives are finite, but life is infinite. People come and people go, but life continues, right? Theater, actors come and actors go, but theater continues. It's infinite. You don't win theater. You win a part, but what happens once you get the part? The finite game is over. Now you enter the infinite game. You have to be able to convert, right? And the reason this is important, and I've seen this unfortunately so many times, I have a friend, one of those people who's furiously talented, frustratingly talented, and we all hate her because she would oversleep and miss auditions, and then the one she'd roll into, she'd get the part. Like, we hate her, right? That is her career. And as a little girl, I think she was 8 years old, 10 years old, she drew a picture of herself with her name and says, New York City Rockettes. And she drew a picture of the Rockettes. And all she wanted to do was be on Broadway and become a Rockette. She became a Rockette. All she wanted to do was get to Broadway. And we all know people like this, some of you are here, which is from a young age, all you wanted to do was get to Broadway. And then you get to Broadway. And then what? You've devoted your entire life to one finite goal, and when you get there, the immediate response is depression. Because I spent 15 years of my life for this one thing, and I got it, and now I don't know what to do next. Like, get to Broadway again. Doesn't have the same ambition. It doesn't have the same passion. You know, that you've devoted you're from Fargo, North Dakota, and that's all you wanted to do was get out of Fargo and make it to Broadway, and you made it, right? It doesn't have the same kind of passion. And this is because these are finite goals. There's a lot of studies that have been done with athletes who have finite goals to become the greatest X in the world, right? So Andre Agassi was one of these athletes. He wanted to become the greatest tennis player that ever lived. Guess what? Everyone in his life, he would view them through, how do you help me get to that? Everything was, how does this help me get to that? Everything was a transaction to how do you help me move to there? And then you know what happens? He achieved it. He became the greatest tennis player in the world. And you know what happened immediately after? Depression. Michael Phelps set out to become the most medaled Olympian in history. Do you know what? He achieved it. You know what happened immediately after? Depression. They spend their whole life working for one goal. Though most will never get it, the few that do don't know what to do next because their goals were finite. Their goals were finite. right? And so there are finite components to your career, but your career should be infinite. So yes, of course you have to win the finite game. You have to get the part. But immediately when you get the part, now you convert to infinite. Now you convert to the reason why you wanted to do this in the first place. By the way, team athletics doesn't suffer the same thing. So when the team wins the Super Bowl, the team wins the Stanley Cup, there is no depression afterwards because there was a team, because they knew it wasn't about each of them as individuals, it was about the group that had to work together. There's relationships as opposed to solo individual. And I think one of the stupidest things that artists do is think that they're in this alone. Or worse, try to do it alone. You're stupid. Right? How do you have a marriage with one person paying attention to the marriage? It takes two. Right? How do you do anything difficult in the world by yourself? You can't, is the answer. Human beings are just not smart enough and just not strong enough. We're just not. We don't even have the emotional fortitude to do it. This concept of courage and sticking with it, it's all bullshit. Courage is an external thing. Right? So I have met people who literally have courage, what we would call courage. They have put their lives on the line. They have thrown themselves into harm's way in order to save the life of someone else. They have done something that we would consider mad, that violates all tenets of that we're supposed to do things to survive so that someone else will survive. Courage, real courage. And I've talked to them and I always say, why did you do it? You've got a wife, you've got kids, why would you do that? And they all give me the same answer. Every time. Because they would have done it for me. Because someone else would have done the same for me. It is the absolute confidence that the person to the left and the person to the right will do the same for me that gives them the courage to do amazing things. It is external. The world's most famous trapeze artist would never try a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. That's madness. That's what relationships are, the net, right? The days you're not sure you can do it, the days you're beaten up, the days you're hard on yourself, the days you're depressed, the days you wonder why it's worth it. Simply having someone in your life who goes, I believe in you. You got this. I'm here. We'll do it together. Cry on my shoulder. That's what gives us the courage to go back the next day. It's not us. It's not us. When you become a Marine, the recruits will sit on the floor of their barracks and they will watch as their drill instructor for the next 13 weeks takes the drill instructor oath right in front of them. Right? Now this is the person who's going to be yelling in their face for 13 weeks. Right? And they hear that drill instructor say, I will continue to believe in you even when you stop believing in yourself. That's what gives them courage to keep going. Right? If you think that you can do this alone, you cannot. And I wish that artists would be more supportive of each other at auditions. You all look at each other like you're the enemies, right? That you're going to take my part, right? As opposed to saying to somebody, good luck. Or, you got this. I believe in you. You're so good. I hope you get it. And have genuine joy when they do. I'm not talking about strangers. I'm not talking about everybody in the room. I'm talking about people you know. I'm talking about your friends who show up for the same audition. I mean, so many people, when somebody else gets the part, they don't deserve it. Well, maybe they were one of those artists who spoke about what they believe, and they happened to connect with the person in the room. And maybe they've had 13 failures before you, and you get every now and then, you get every third one. They do deserve it. Sometimes it's completely unfair. I have a friend who auditioned for Cabaret. She had auditioned so many times that they knew her. They loved her, right? And she went in one time. She told me the story how she went in one time. They go, oh, you're perfect. You're perfect. The problem is we want a brunette and you're a blonde. Seriously? That's why they threw her out? Because they have no imagination? She'll dye her hair. Never occurred to them. She's a blonde. She didn't fit the image. My point is, it's unfair. It's unfair. Get over it. You know? It's unfair. Right? It's not a meritocracy. It's just not. Right? It's just not. And so I think this idea of relationships, I wish artists, especially performing artists, had support groups for each other. I mean not online, not over text. I mean every last Thursday of every month, a group of, there might be 10 or 15 you in the group, and whoever can show up, you go out for dinner, or you meet at someone's house, and you just talk. Sometimes you talk about the business and sometimes you don't. It doesn't matter. But every last Thursday of every month, this group of artists who are all going through the same thing meet. Let me tell you the power of that and the importance of that. And I'll give you an extreme example so that you have no excuse to say, well, it wouldn't work for us. I met a former Marine recently. Named Zach. Zach reached out to us. We're not really sure why. He's not really sure why, but he did. And he wrote an email that touched us, and so I called Zach. And I cried with him on the phone, and I wanted to meet him. I actually got to meet him this week. Zach left the Marine Corps and suffered serious PTSD. He refused to call it PTSD because he was only deployed once. And to him, PTSD is actually a badge of honor you earn if you deploy multiple times. So he hadn't earned the right to say I have PTSD in his mind. This is what he said. And it was so bad, and the depression was so hard, and the nightmares were so awful, that Zach decided to kill himself. The way he decided to kill himself was that he took his motorcycle out on the highway, and he chose a truck, and he was going to ram his motorcycle into the back of the truck. And so he was going 150 miles an hour down the highway, and right as he was about to hit the truck, for some weird reason, the truck changed lanes and he just went right past it. A completely different time, he decided to try again. And you know when a highway splits or there's a bridge, there's usually some sort of concrete bollard, you know? Zach decided to ram his motorcycle into the concrete bollard. He was upgrading his strategy because it can't move. He was hard on the throttle, driving straight towards a concrete bollard. Nobody's exactly sure what happened or why it happened, but his back tire skidded on dirt and it pushed him out of the way. Didn't die. So he tried again. He decided this time to ride his bike into oncoming traffic. So on the highway one night, he drove into oncoming traffic, turned the lights off his motorcycle, and drove, trying to hit a car. And all the cars kept honking and driving around him. He didn't die. He tried a fourth time, and he wouldn't tell us that story, but it didn't work. And so he realized he probably has to keep living. And he realized what he was missing was people who get him. And he met a soldier who says, I know what you're going through. Come and work with me. And Zach now has devoted his life to helping other Marines who are struggling. People who they feel alone and they feel that nobody gets them. They can ask for help, and there's plenty of support groups and people and friends and sisters and brothers who want to love them and hold them, but they have no idea what they went through. And so it's Marines helping Marines. It's soldiers helping soldiers. It's sailors helping sailors. It's airmen helping airmen. They don't even let airmen help Marines. Marines help Marines. Soldiers help soldiers. Sailors help sailors. And airmen help airmen. Somebody who totally understands what you've gone through and says, I'll be there for you. So when they say, you gotta go see a shrink, I'm not seeing a shrink. Like, dude, I was there. I know exactly what you're going through. I'm telling you, you gotta see one. They will look after you. And then they'll introduce you to a psychologist who is a Marine. Not just some random psychologist or some random doctor. They keep it in the family, right? And he's fantastic, and he's happy, and he has purpose. And I mean, what an amazing human being we got to meet. You know? He's such a good guy. So if it works for them, artists need to help artists. Actors need to help actors. Dancers need to help dancers. Singers need to help singers. Triple threats need to help triple threats. You gotta create community, because your friends don't know the world you live in. They don't know the life you live. They can't relate. They're well-intentioned. They just don't understand. You have to help each other. Genuinely. Form a group of people who love each other. Just go do things. Go bowling together. It doesn't matter what you do. But you gotta have community. You guys have very weak community. And it's most evident when you're waiting. I've gone just out of curiosity. I went and hung out. I do things like this. Because I hear you guys talking about it, so I want to see what it's all about. So I went, I went to one of those places that have all the auditions. And I just went and hung out. I went and just hung out. And it was awful. I hated every second of it. I wasn't even auditioning. And I didn't want to be there. I could feel the tension. I could see the daggers. I could feel the hatred. I could feel the jealousy. I could feel the insecurity. I could see it, and it was awful, and I hated every second, and I didn't see anybody. And people knew each other. People like, hey, people knew each other. I didn't see anybody offer support to anybody. Somebody practicing their lines, and somebody was just hanging around. Nobody said, let me help you. I didn't see any of it. It was gross. So the question was about visualization, and while watching the Olympics, you're watching some of these super high performers, and some of them talking about visualizing. This one athlete said, I'm uncomfortable visualizing, right? Is that what happened? No, that's you're saying it's uncomfortable visualizing. Oh, that's a different situation altogether. So you're uncomfortable visualizing success.
Well, I think because I'm probably playing the finite game versus I don't know how to transition from the finite to the infinite. You're talking about.
So there's finite success, and then there's staying in the game. They're different.
Yeah.
Finite success, and you have to play finite games within the infinite. You have to, right? And as long as there's a beginning, middle, and end, that's a finite game. And we all have to agree on what the rules of the game are. We all agree that once the parts are given out, the game is over. And everybody agrees to that. That's how we know it's the end. But nobody knows what the end after that is, because we haven't agreed upon it. Or nobody's even agreed upon what success is. Is it money? Is it number of parts landed? Is it size of the part you get? Is it being on the front or being in the back? Like, is it better to be the lead in a small play or in the chorus of a big one? Like, I don't know, right? The point is we haven't agreed. And we haven't agreed on the time frame. Well, you have to be able to land a part in 4 years, otherwise you're a failure. Or you're a success. Like, we haven't agreed. That's the infinite part of it, right? There are finite components within, but that's the infinite part of it. So, you have to get comfortable with visualizing, I hate to tell you. But it has to be on your own terms, right? And it's the difference between seeing the trees and seeing the path. So if you're saying, I'm uncomfortable seeing success, what you're saying is, I'd rather look at trees. And here's the good news. You'll hit them, right? Like, there's a narrative in your head, and that narrative has to change, because you will fulfill your own narrative, right? I'll tell you a funny story that makes my point in a circuitous way, but it's a funny story. So I wanted to prove that all marketing was the same thing. No matter what you were selling, it was always the same thing, right? And good marketing talked about the buyer, and bad marketing talked about the seller. Make sense? I versus you, right? So to illustrate my point, I wanted to prove that what the homeless do and what Microsoft does is the same thing. So if you think about what the homeless do, there is advertising. They sit there with a little sign that says, I'm homeless, I'm hungry, I got 6 kids, I'm a veteran, like whatever, trying to appeal to everybody. That's called a little billboard, right? Microsoft has a billboard that says more memory, bigger screen, all the rest of it, right? More RAM, more ROM, right? And what the homeless are selling is goodwill. So if you walk past a homeless person and you put money in their cup, you feel good. If you give them nothing, you either feel nothing or feel bad. You paid for that feeling. There's an exchange of consideration. I sold you goodwill, you paid for it, you got it, right? They're selling goodwill. That's what they're doing. is selling the feeling of goodwill. So I found a homeless person who was willing to help me, and her sign was pretty typical, and I found out that she makes between $20 and $30 a day selling goodwill, and she works an 8 to 10 hour day, right? $30 is considered a good day, right? Selling goodwill. And like I said, her sign was pretty typical. So I asked her if I could change her sign, and we did. And the sign that I gave her, she made $40 in 2 hours. The sign that I gave her said, if you only give once a month, please think of me next time. It wasn't about the seller, it was about the giver. What are the reasons people say they don't give? How do I know that they're genuine? I can't give to everyone. So I simply answered the questions. If you only give once a month, please think of me next time. I know you can't give to everybody, I'm legit. That's all, right? Now here's the point I was going to make. She could have made $150 that day, but after she made her $40 in 2 hours, she left. Because one of the reasons she's homeless, or we could surmise that one of the reasons she's homeless is she's decided that she needs $20 or $30 to live per day. So once she had it, she moved on. That's a narrative. It's a narrative, right? So she'll stay there because she didn't sit longer. That's a narrative. So there's a wonderful little trick you can use with your narrative, right? Just add the word yet at the end, okay? I'm not famous yet. I'm not that talented yet. I'm so bad, I'm not good at auditions. Like, I need to get better at, like, I suck at auditions for now, right? You can just add a couple of words of hope or opportunity or the potential for future or some sort of infinite component that will profoundly change your narrative. We all get hard on ourselves. We all beat ourselves up. And by the way, in your community, when you start going out every last Thursday of every month, right? And somebody says, I suck at this. One of you will say, for now. You'll correct them. I'll never make it. Yet. You don't have to yell at them and scream like, no, you got to be positive. Just throw a word at the end of the sentence for them. So what you have is a narrative. So I'll give you one more Olympic story. I was also watching the Olympics. And this is what I realized this when I was watching the London Olympics, so a couple Olympics ago. And I was annoyed by how all the journalists asked all the athletes the same stupid question. Literally, everyone. Were you nervous? Or are you nervous? Whether it was before or after the event. Every single time. And every single time, all the athletes gave the exact same answer. No, I was excited. No, I'm excited. Every single time. These elite athletes had learned to interpret body stimulus. What are the signs of nervousness? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. What are the stimulus for excitement? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. They had learned to interpret what their body was telling them, not as nerves, but as excitement. And the reason the journalists said, were you nervous, is because they would be nervous. Athletes would never say that to each other. They say, that was exciting. So I tried it. I did a little test on myself, right? I'm on a plane. We start hitting some really bad turbulence. I go, and then I say to myself, literally out loud, this is exciting. And I was fine. And I was fine. So I do it a lot now. When I find myself getting nervous, I say to myself, this is so exciting, and I'll explain the reason to myself why. So, like an actor, you don't get nervous when you go on stage anymore, but occasionally you do. So I get to go on stage a lot, and I don't really get nervous much anymore, but I was going to present to 3,000 chiefs of police right in the middle of all this police brutality hullabaloo. And I got really nervous because the stakes were really high, you know? And I was literally getting nervous backstage. And I said to myself, this is so exciting. I have an opportunity to talk to a group of people who can actually affect change in this country. this is really exciting. Now, I could have said the same thing. I'm so nervous. I'm about to talk to people who can, but the interpretation was excitement. Just change the narrative. It works brilliantly well.
Simon.
I should give shorter answers.
No, they're so good. Ironically, this next question is about time. We got a lot of questions before the event about the relationship of an artist to time, and you are someone who's currently working under a deadline, so you can relate. When you are a person who wants to create something, and then someone says, great, please create this for me, it's due on such and such a day. Can you just talk about what that relationship is like and how you manage it?
I think some people are better at it and some people are worse at it. I don't think there's a universal answer for this one. You know, I really admire artists, anybody that have discipline. You know, so I know writers, people ask me, what's your writing process? Because, you know, because some writers treat it like a job. They write from 9 to 5. Some artists treat it as a goal. I'm going to write 2,500 words a day, even if what I write is crap, right? I do neither of those things. It just doesn't work for me. I've tried, it just doesn't work. My process is days of guilt and self-loathing, punctuated by hours of sheer brilliance. And I don't know when those hours, strike. That's my process. I think the relationship with time is, you know, it's like, you know who helped me on this? And I can empathize, I can relate because of my sophomore work. You know, because somebody asked me, how long did it take you to write Start With Why, which is my first book? And my answer was, every day of my life up until that day. Right? The problem is with your second work, it's like, okay, you have a year. But it took me every day of my life up until that day to write the first one. I'm not sure I can do it in a year. And people would always ask me, you know, I think they're trying to be helpful, but they would say things to me like, how are you going to do a second TED Talk as famous as the first one? How are you going to write a second book as good as the first one? It's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it was actually Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk that helped me. She gave this wonderful TED Talk where she talked about the concept of genius, right? Where prior to I think it was the Renaissance, probably was the Renaissance. Prior to the Renaissance, or maybe probably just during the Renaissance, the concept of genius was a daemon that lived in the walls. So if somebody produced a marvelous work, we would say of them, he had his genius. His genius was with him. And if there was a flop, they would say, she didn't have her genius. Her genius wasn't there, right? So you could never take full credit for your success, but you never had to beat yourself up so much if you had a failure either. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the line, the genius that you had became the genius that you are. She's a genius. And for their profound work that they produced. And now, you have to live up to that. And the stress of living up to being a genius, because the one thing that you did that none of us really know how we did it, because it was largely accidental, even though we take all the credit, the stress is overwhelming. The stress is overwhelming. And then you add deadlines and the rest of it. So I, thank goodness, learned that lesson before I started my second work and was at complete peace with the fact that I had an inspiration, not that I was inspired or am inspired, when I produced my first work. And was totally comfortable that I would not produce a second work as good as the first. I removed the comparison. And my only goal was to produce as good a work as that work could be, irrespective of the other work. I wasn't trying to make this work better than that work. I wasn't trying to make this work as good as that work. I was trying to make this work the best work it could be by its own standards and its own metrics. In fact, the techniques that I used to write the first one, I had completely different techniques to write the second one. All the things that I relied on that helped me stay productive in the first thing, they didn't even work in the second one, so I had to invent entirely new systems to help me be productive in the second one. It literally was an entirely different experience with zero stress of comparison. So I think time is the same thing. By the way, my first book was exactly on time. I literally handed my manuscript in on the day. Apparently, that's a big deal. Apparently, nobody does that. I didn't know that. It was my first book. Nobody told me that nobody really hands it in on time, but I did, literally on the day. My second book was a year late because I had to write a good book based on its own standards, and I couldn't do it in the time frame. Now, I'm the first to admit that when you write one book that sells exceptionally well, the publisher's much more patient with the second one that's late. I get that. Susan Cain took 6 years to write the book Quiet. It's her first book. 6 years. Right? She's working on another book. It's probably going to take her 6 years. She knows that. She's okay with that. But like I said before, I'm going to refer back to the answer I gave before. Remember I said there's 2 ways to manage a career? You stand for what you stand for, and people either buy into it or don't. It's much harder. You're going to get fewer parts, but my goodness, when you get them. Or you bend and shape and you play by their rules. The same goes for this, right? When you say to somebody, I will produce a really good piece of work, but the odds are pretty high I'm going to miss the deadline. If they're deadline driven, you won't get the job. But if you're like, I'm going to do it on the deadline no matter what because I want this job, you'll produce something. I have no doubt. It may even be really good. But Susan went in very openly and said, I can't do it in a year. I'm not going to do it in a year. There's no insecurity. I'm not going to do it in a year. You'll have the book when I'm done with it. Hopefully it'll be a few years, but you'll get it when it's done. And they went, well, okay. That's my point. They bought into her, not the deadline. Right? Not better or worse. They're not better or worse. Some publishers can afford that, and some publishers just need to produce books, and they understand that sometimes they put shit out onto the marketplace, but hey, look at how many books we got on the market. They're playing a numbers game. It's a different business model. But Susan made the decision to be that kind of writer.
Simon, when is your next book coming out?
Assuming that I meet my deadline, it'll be out in October. Amazingly, I think this is so funny about modern book selling. You can actually buy my book on Amazon. It's called The Infinite Game, and I haven't even finished writing it. I think that's so fantastically funny. But yes, you can buy it. It's not even the right cover, but it's a cover. Yes, there was behind you. There was a question, yes.
So I wanted to go back to what you said about living 2 lives or asking for two different things. And maybe I just didn't hear correctly, but like for me, I'm a songwriter first,
Yeah.
and then I got into singing and theater and all that stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
So I always keep that creative brain.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for me to actually interpret other people's work because I'm such a creative.
Because you know what they did wrong.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
So it's like I critique it.
Yeah.
I still write music and I still perform for my original work.
Yeah.
But I'm also still auditioning and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you consider that same complexity of asking for
Yeah.
because I feel like they're in
Yeah.
the same realm, but then when I'm
So the question was, so she's a singer-songwriter, but you still perform other people's works, and you have frustration sometimes when you perform other people's works because you could do it better, you would have done it differently, right? And I think to do both things, you have to be able to separate them, right? Which is, you have to be able to say, I'm a creator and I'm an interpreter. And you create when it's time to create, and you interpret when it's time to interpret. It's unfair to you, but it's also unfair to the other creator for you to come in and judge their work based on your creative standards, just as when you give your creations to someone else to perform, you don't need them or want them to judge your work. If you don't like the work, then don't sing it. So, and again, you may have 2 parallel paths, which is I'm going to be this kind of artist for my creation, and I'm going to be this kind of artist for my interpretation, but you can't have.
You don't think they're unbalanced necessarily for one and both?
I mean.
I do in my head. I do want to be EGOT. I do want that Grammy for my writing, but I also want the Tony for doing someone else's work too. You know what I'm saying?
Have at it. Have at it. But
I have visualized, so
yeah.
I'm down with your vision.
And my question is, Why do you want the Grammy? Why do you want the Tony? What happens once you get the Grammy?
I think it's a matter of like, I didn't think I could do it. And then I'm like, I have more goals than that. So that it's like, okay, I didn't think I could.
So you only want one
I did it.
Grammy. You're okay with one Grammy.
Huh?
You only want one Grammy, just to say I did it.
I would've done.
How many's a ton? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 10? Who has the most? How many Grammys?
I don't know.
What person got the most? Do you want that? Do you want more than that?
I do.
Why?
Ego.
Okay. Okay, so at what point does it run out?
True.
I'm just curious.
At that point, I switch into the next thing because I have multiple things that I'm
But how many Grammys do you have to win before you switch?
I don't have a number. I don't think I'll put a number on that.
I think that you will. I admire your passion and your gusto. I do. I love it, and you have that drive. And I think you'll be very surprised how after the first Grammy, the insecurity starts to set in that you never had prior. Okay, because you will get to the point where you can no longer judge your work based on its own merits for yourself. You now want everybody else to judge your work for you, because that's really what a Grammy is.
Speaking for myself, my training definitely taught me to be more of a malleable type of artist.
Yeah.
To be presenting what I think the director is looking for.
Mhm.
Can you maybe speak to choosing to transition and the actionable things you can do to transition from that to owning who you are and your own voice?
Don't compare. It's where your talent lies, right? Michael Sheehan, malleable. Whew, is he good though? I mean, really, really good, right? There are brilliant, brilliant artists. Sometimes we don't know who they are. Like most people don't know their names because they play so many roles so differently. Gary Oldman, malleable artist. Whoa, the best, one of the best. What's his name? Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, have you ever seen two parts look the same? Never. One of the best malleable artists I've ever seen in my life. Robert De Niro, not so malleable. Great, if you like that. It's like there was a wonderful review. I went to see a Philip Glass opera, and the review was great. The review said, "It's the same tune, but if you like that tune, it's brilliant." Not malleable. Right? When art sounds like itself, it's that kind of art. When art can be anything, it's a different kind of art. So don't for 1 second think one is better or worse. Right? There are great artists who play themselves every time. And there are great artists who play others every single time.
Okay. Personally, I was thinking about the drive to create things that others want. Versus the drive to create my own work, and that coming from an interpretive artist standpoint, rather than walking into an audition room and thinking, how can I be the best actor that this director wants to see? How can I, bend and mold into what they want, rather than choosing to present what I am and letting them either move it on stage.
I think whether you're an interpretive artist or whether you're a creator, I think you should always be showing up to be yourself, right? This is that horrible term, authenticity, because you never want to be what they want. You want to bring your own interpretation to the part, and hopefully they'll like it. It's a slightly different mental model. Can you imagine you go on a date, and on your first date you say, "Tell me how you would like me to be." I'm a malleable artist. I'm very comfortable. I like pleasing people. I like people being happy. I want you to be happy. So I'm going to learn what you like, and I'm going to do that, right? It's not a good way to start a relationship, right? And I think the same goes for any kind of piece. I want you to bring yourself to it, because yourself is the only thing that distinguishes you from all the other performers, because training is a commodity. Rehearsal is a commodity, right? Your resume is the commodity, Everybody's got a couple of great coaches and a couple of great parts, and everybody fudged a couple, you know? So if everything else is the commodity and the only thing that distinguishes you from somebody else is you, then I would stick with that. It's probably the only thing you're good at too, which is yourself. You're a master at it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the same in my business. You know, there are people who are much smarter than me, much more disciplined than me, have much greater command of, like when I quote studies, I can't remember the studies. I was like, there was a study, they did a study, you know, they who do all the studies. You know? And I'll stand on the stage and be like, and I'll like get the numbers wrong. I'll be like, 80% is like 75%. And there's a friend of mine who's in the same, who does similar work, who knows every study. It'll be like, so a Stanford study in 1989, they found out that 79.6%. And I was like, and he thinks it gives him more credibility. He thinks you have to be able to do that because it gives credibility. And it does. I just wish I could remember it because I can't, right? And it drives him up the wall that I can't, like they did a study in like something like this with like about 80%, I think, something like that. You should go check yourselves. And it drives him nuts. But that's kind of just who I am. And I'm at peace with it, you know? So what distinguishes me from him is not that I'm trying to do, I really should remember the names of the studies, and I really should. And you just can't, you know? Unless I wrote them down, and I don't like doing notes. Unless I put them on a PowerPoint, and I refuse to do that. So my style is a little more casual, a little more relaxed. I could get all the data right if I put it up on a slide. I'd never get it wrong. But I sacrifice the accuracy for this. That's my choice. It's not better or worse, it's my choice.
Something you said
Right side of the room, left side of the room is showing you up. Just saying. All the questions are coming from the left side of the room.
Something that you said that struck a chord with me was people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yes.
And when I heard that, I thought, oh, artists are so much better at that. We're in touch with our feelings and why we do things.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I thought of that, I thought, no, we put so much bullshit in between our actual why and the what it turns into our why.
Yeah.
Why do you think that there's such a big disconnect?
I think there's a couple of reasons. The question was, when I talk about what you do and why you do it, that your inclination was that artists are so in touch with their feelings that they inherently would understand the why, but what you've learned is they don't. Is that?
Correct.
Okay. Why is that? I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one of the reasons is goes back to community, which is you don't help each other, you don't talk to each other, it doesn't come out. And because you don't get to have that depth of conversation with somebody about this kind of stuff, what are you going to do it yourself? You know? Like when we do why discoveries for anybody, it's at least a pair, right? We strongly recommend people do it with someone. It's better. It works better. So I think part of that is community. You've actually, though you may be in touch with your feelings, I don't think you've ever gone to the depths you need to go to understand what your why is, which is a conversation and somebody else listening to you and saying, I don't understand. Why did you say this? Forcing you to go deeper, right? That's number one. And I think number two is, dare I say it, hubris. A little bit of excessive pride. I do emotions for a living, right? And so the result is very generic stuff. Because I've talked to plenty of artists and asked them, do you know your why? And they, with great confidence, say, of course I know my why. Of course. And I say, what is it? What really inspires me is I want to entertain people. Like, how many people can tell me that? What really inspires me is that I can transport people away from their stress to another world. Like, that is entirely accurate for the entire discipline. That's like an airline telling me, our why is to get people to where they're going. True, but not proprietary. It's good for the industry. So you're right, you've cleverly defined the why for all entertainment, right? Accurate, just too broad. And so within all entertainment, there's a different why for music, there's a different why for acting, there's a different why for dancing, there's a different why for performing, there's a different why for creating versus, there's all in, and then there's a different why for you. And the questions that you want to grapple with are what about you, what you do, is worth the suffering? Entertaining people is worth suffering? Bullshit. Bullshit. You know, everything that you go for in survival jobs and living in a tiny apartment with 12 roommates is worth some banker boy paying $400 for a ticket to come see you? Bullshit. So he can escape his stress for the day for 2 hours? Bullshit. Right? What is worth? What about what you do is so worth the sacrifice? Right? You're going to have that conversation by yourself? Unlikely. But maybe every last Thursday of every month, another way to get to that answer is to find the times in which you did this thing that you fell in love with this thing. It might have been a commercial flop. It might have been the worst experience of your life, but for some reason, this one specific incident, this one specific experience exemplifies what I love, not like. You know? Do you love your wife? I like her. I like her. No, do you love your wife? I like her a lot. I told you I like her a lot. Like, it's a different standard, like and love. Right? Didn't like the show. Didn't like the whatever it is you were doing. You loved it. Find those. I'll give you an example. So I did some work with the Disney Imagineers. The Disney Imagineers are the ones responsible for everything physical that Disney makes. The boats, the parades, the shows, the rides, the parks. The only thing they don't touch is merchandising and the films, but everything else is the Imagineers. They're incredible. And I went to talk to the Imagineers about this concept of why, and I decided spontaneously to demonstrate it, to do an example. And I picked a random person in the audience, one of the Imagineers, and I picked an older guy, because I figured he was more senior, had been around for a while. And what I didn't realize, I found out afterwards, the guy that I picked had a nickname at the company. His name was Ice Chips, because he was a cold bastard. And people who worked for Ice Chips didn't like working for Ice Chips, because Ice Chips was hard to work for, hard on them, and he drove them hard. He was a cold bastard. I picked Ice Chips. So I asked Ice Chips, can you tell me a specific story? Can you tell me a specific story that helps me understand what you love about being a Disney Imagineer? And he didn't have to think too long, and he told me, and the story he told took 5 or 6 minutes to tell. It was wonderful. But here's the short version. He oversaw the design and build of a brand new ride at Disneyland. And on its opening, he decided to go to see it run for the first time. And he was standing back and watching the parents and the kids started to line up for the ride. And in the front of the line, there was a guy in a wheelchair and his daughter. And he said, everywhere in the world, what the world sees is a man in a wheelchair and his daughter. He said, only at Disneyland do we only see a father and his daughter. And it's the only place that you can ever go where he will never feel like he's in a wheelchair with his daughter. He will feel like he's just a father with his daughter. And if you know anybody who is in a wheelchair who's ever gone to Disneyland, it is one of the best designed parks for handicapped, disabled. And not only were we all crying, but instantly everybody understood why he was so hard, because to him those were the stakes. Instantly, everyone wanted to work for him. Instantly, everyone wanted him to be hard on them because they wanted to push to produce that level of quality, to have that kind of impact in the life of another human being. That's purpose. But he had to go through the process, and nobody knew it. Until he articulated it, they didn't like him. But once his why was clear, he didn't have to change a thing. He did not have to change a thing. That's what why provides. It provides context for who you are. to your friends, to people you're auditioning to. They will understand your interpretation. They understand what you're bringing to the part because you start with why. And yes, you say it. It takes a second. It takes a second. Where's your name? What's your name? Where do you come from? Just throw it in there. Ignore the question. Right? I do it every single time I go. Every meeting I have, every meeting that I call, I'll say, let me tell you why I called this meeting. Every meeting that I have, I'll tell you, let me tell you why I wanted to come to this meeting. And I'll ask it. I want to know why you took the meeting too, please. Now, you can't do that. You know. But I will say, before we get started, I just want you to know why I took this meeting. I imagine a world that does not yet exist. I imagine a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe at work, and return home fulfilled at the end of the day. And so I saw the opportunity to have this meeting as something that I hope will help me advance that world. My name is Simon Sinek, and I'm from blah, blah, blah. It takes us what? It took 8 seconds. Nobody's ever interrupted me, ever, and said, oh, no, I just want your name. Or I could say my why. My why is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. So together, each of us can change our world for the better. Everything I do is singularly devoted to that. I'm hoping that this affords me the opportunity to bring that to life. What is that, 6 seconds? Now you know exactly who I am. You know exactly what I'm going to bring. If you don't want it, you're not going to hire me. If you do want it, you give me a chance. Every single time. It's never failed me. And I use it as my own filter too, right? Because it's always in my head. So back in the early days, I often get accused that I have the luxury of being able to turn down things. I've been turning down things before I could afford to. I had no money in the bank, literally hand to mouth I was living, and yet I would turn down business because it didn't feel right. It wasn't right. I chose a different path. I chose this path. Much more difficult, right? True story. Guy calls me up. He says, I got your name from someone who hired you and spoke very highly of you. Thank you. I've heard about your work. Thank you. Convince me why I should hire you. My answer? Don't. What? I'm not the right guy for you, which is what my polite way of saying you're not the right guy for me. I'm not right for this part. I'm the wrong one for this part. I'm sorry. I'm not right. I bowed out of things all the time, always saying, it's not me. Which is true, because I want this. The ones I loved were the people who said, you're onto something. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think you have all the answers. I think there's some flaws in what you're doing, but I think you're onto something, with a little grin. I'm like, well, I want to work with you. They're buying my why. They already told me my what's flawed. But that takes huge discipline. And let me tell you, it does get very hard. And you can compromise now and then for practical reasons. I got bills to pay. I got it. I'm an idealist. I know reality exists. But you can't do it too often. Like when you're getting into shape, like if you exercise a lot, you can have chocolate cake. Knock yourself out. You just can't do it too often. Every now and then, a little bit of out of balance, it's okay. Yes?
So 2 questions.
Right side of the room. Just saying. Just saying. Yes?
Following off of that, how do you deal, I don't know if you would have an evolving why, but how do you deal with personal evolutions and maybe a changing sense of what that is?
Yeah.
And then also, this is what I've been holding on to for a while, I wanted to understand better how the infinite and the finite relate to your schema of why and what, if they relate.
Okay, so the first question was, remind me?
Yeah, so how do you deal with an evolving sense?
How do you deal with an evolving sense of why? Self-growth and all the rest of it. Okay, you only have one why. Okay, your why was fully formed probably in your mid to late teens. It is the sum total of who you are, how you were raised, the experiences you had when you were younger. It is who you are. The rest of your life simply offers you opportunities to live in balance or out of balance with that why. The earlier you learn it, the more likely you can manage the opportunities you say yes and no to so that you remain in balance, right? So your why has never changed, ever. You only have one. What you're talking about is different things that you're doing to bring your why to life. I've had a few careers. I had great passion for all of them at various times. And even this journey that I'm on with this concept of why has changed multiple times. What I'm doing has evolved many times. The what is very malleable and flexible. But the why that's underlying, it's always been there. It's always been there. So you only have one why, okay? And the self-growth is becoming to terms with it and making sure that you're making decisions that keep you in balance. That's the growth. That's the growth. And that's an ongoing process. No one's perfect at it. You get better and better and better at it, right?
You can keep introducing yourself.
You can keep reinventing yourself as long as you can reinvent yourself as long as it's consistent with why you do what you do. Yeah.
Right.
You can do different things as long as it's consistent. And you find that that new thing actually does allow you to bring your why to life. That's great. And your second question was what? How the infinite game relates to the why, how, and what?
Right, the infinite, finite,
Yeah.
and then the what.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So my work is semi-autobiographical. My work is about a journey. It's my journey. It just so happens there are other human beings out there on similar human journeys. Just so happens. Thank goodness. So why is where I started. Why is about knowing why you do what you do. It's this higher sense of purpose, cause, or belief, and it's the thing that attracts people to you and attracts you to people, right? The problem is what happens once you've been attracted to all the people are attracted to you. That's when I wrote Leaders Eat Last. Now that you got the people, what do you do with the people? How do you make an environment in which people love and trust each other? Is it them or is it the environment? Turns out it's the environment. Get the environment right, you get trust and cooperation. Get the environment wrong, you get cynicism, paranoia, mistrust, and self-interest. It's not the people, it's the environment. Okay, so now you got this amazing team and everybody loves each other, but the problem is you work in reality. And the world doesn't care about your why, and the world doesn't care about your team. They only care about themselves and what they get and what they want. So how is an idealist supposed to operate in reality? And that's where the construction of the finite and infinite game has helped me understand and manage how I go through reality. So I'm not just an idiot with his head in the clouds. I'm also an idiot with his feet on the ground. And that's what it is. So the concept of why, there's 5 things that you need to play the infinite game, right? Just cause, courageous leadership, vulnerable team, worthy adversary, and a flexible playbook, right? So the first one, just cause, that's the why. That's the why. You have to have a why to play the infinite game. Then courageous leadership. You have to have the courage to do it. Say yes and no to things. Say yes to difficult things. Where's my friend with the visualization? Say yes to difficult things and say no to things that you know are wrong, even though they may look good on paper. We do that with people all the time, right? And the third thing, vulnerable team. That's the circle of safety. That's Leaders Eat Last. Then you add in a worthy adversary. Okay? A worthy adversary is about respecting the people in your industry, your competitors. Respecting them, not hating them. Because what your worthy adversaries do, what those people in that audition room do, is they reveal to you all your weaknesses. That's why we get insecure. That's why we hate people. We hate the people who reveal to us our insecurities. They make us feel bad about ourselves. Right? So it's not them. It's you. Right? And that's good, because that's a worthy adversary. Because we don't run our best times when we run around a track by ourselves. That's if you only went to auditions by yourself. You'd actually never improve, because you have nothing to judge against. We run our best times when we run in a race. Now, if your entire goal is to undermine the competitor, if your entire goal is to beat your competition, you can shoot your competitor in the race, and you will get the part, you will win the race, but you'll still be a slow runner. Or you lose the race And you learn why they won the race. You learn your weaknesses. I'm bad in the straightaway. Good at turns, bad in the straightaway. I'm only going to practice the straightaway. I'm better at sprinting. I'm no good at distance. Whatever it is. And you work harder and harder because the only true competitor in an infinite game is yourself. Everyone else there is to reveal your weaknesses to you so you can find the areas in which you can improve. I'm susceptible to it. There's another author out there that I hate. I hate him. And when I look at my book ranking on Amazon, I don't look at anything else, my book ranking and his. No one else, just the two of us. And when mine's up, I'm like, and when he's ahead of me, I'm like, doesn't deserve it. Now, he's super smart. He's super good at what he does. He's really compelling. Intellectually, I know he's really good, but I hate him. So we were invited to speak on the same stage. And the interviewer said to us, why don't you guys introduce each other? And he said, I'll go first. Simon? So now I had to go first because he was being funny. I'm like, funny. Here's what I said to the audience. I turned to him in front of the audience and I said, you make me really insecure. I said, because all of your strengths are all of my weaknesses. And he turned to me, he said, funny, I feel the same about you. We are now close friends, we love each other. I love it when his book is doing better than mine. I love it when his career is on fire. I love it when people bring up his name. I'm proud of him and I want his work out there. Because I came to terms with the fact that it was never him.
Can you unpack the playbook?
Oh, the open playbook?
What was the fifth one?
The fourth one was the worthy adversary, and the last one is the flexible playbook or the open playbook. The flexible playbook means that the just cause is fixed, but the path you take to get there must be flexible. So going to my singer-songwriter friend in the back, the path you take is flexible. You can bring your cause to life in any way you want. It's the people who say, I'm only a singer. And so they only take singing parts. And they close the opportunity to do things that would inspire them and inspire others and force them to work really hard at something that they're not already good at because they haven't been practicing for 20 years. Because they've got a fixed path and the cause becomes malleable. It's like and they justify it. As opposed to saying, my cause is fixed and I'll take whatever path I need to take to advance my why. So I've learned this, right? I am not a public speaker, but I do a lot of public speaking. I'm not an author, but I've written a bunch of books. I refuse to define myself by what I do. At the time that I did those things, or at the time that I choose to do those are the things that I have decided are good ways for me to advance my message and my cause. And if I stop speaking publicly, my self-identity is totally fine. Like we all have friends who are doctors and bankers and and when they stop doing that thing, they lose their self-identity. We wrap too much of our identity in what we do rather than define ourselves as devoted to a cause bigger than ourselves. Was Martin Luther King a public speaker? Or was he a man devoted to a cause? Of course, he was devoted to a cause. I choose to live a life devoted to a cause, define myself by none of those things. To the point, I'm actually a bastard about it, to the point that when I blur books, right? They always write, it was the best book I ever read, right? And then underneath it'll say, Simon Sinek, and then this is how you do it for other people. CEO, blah, blah, blah. Best-selling author, blah, 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 right? That's the credibility. That's why they do it, right? And I'm a bastard about it. I make them write, this is the best book I ever read. Simon Sinek, optimist and author of. Author always comes second, optimist comes first, because if I stop writing books, I'm still an optimist. My identity is wrapped into why I do what I do, not what I do. So that's what the flexible playbook means. It means that you're open to the fact that there may be paths that are different to the one that you're on, and those paths, if you choose to take them, may be extremely difficult to do. I'll give you one silly example. So Steve Jobs had a very clear sense of purpose, a very clear sense of cause, which is to give the individual the power to stand up to Big Brother, right? He loved that. And he saw the personal computer as the great way to do that, right? That an individual could compete against a corporation. How cool is that, right? And he's already a famous CEO. They've had success with the Apple I, they've had success with the Apple II, and their next product is called the Lisa, right? That's their next big product. Now, coincidentally, at the same time that they were developing the Lisa, Jobs and a bunch of the senior executives went to visit Xerox. And Xerox showed them a new product that they invented called the graphic user interface, a new technology. And Jobs, as he's leaving Xerox, says to his guys, we have to invest in this. This is way better than what we're doing. This is a leapfrog of what we're doing. People don't have to learn a computer language. They can just move a mouse on a screen. That means even more people could take down the man. We have to invest in this graphic user interface thing. And his guy said, Steve, are you crazy? We've already invested millions of dollars and countless man hours in the Lisa. We can't walk away from it. If we do that, we'll blow up our own company. To which Jobs replies, better we should blow it up than someone else. That decision was the Macintosh. A computer platform that profoundly changed computing as we know it. The entire software of Windows is designed to mimic a Macintosh. That's a flexible playbook. That's a man with a fixed cause and an open path, which means you might have devoted thousands of dollars and countless years becoming X. Except that's better. And you're going to have to learn a whole new discipline. And it's going to be really hard work, and you're just going to walk away. Yeah. But it's not random. And it's not opportunistic. It's not because I think I can make more money here. It's because I found a better path that will help me advance my cause. Technically, we're done.
Yeah.
But I'll keep going if you want. We'll do a little more. I think, should we take any questions from Facebook, or did that not work out?
There's a lot of good ones.
Okay,
I'm having trouble seeing them on my...
Okay, let's do a couple of Facebook questions. If you guys need to leave, technically we're done and you need to leave, you can leave. I won't be offended. Oh, I have to say goodbye to you because you're going away for a week. Come here. No, you have come here.
Molly!
Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
That's fine.
Thanks so much.
Have a great time wherever you're going.
Yeah, if you need to go, that's fine. I'll just keep going for those who want to stay.
Yeah, would you mind reading a couple of those questions from
I
the feed?
would be happy to. All right, this one seems interesting. There's a word we hate in there. What are techniques to bring ourselves back to a more authentic state when we feel like we can't show our authentic self?
Okay, so what are some techniques we can use to go back to our authentic state when we, what?
When we feel like we can't show.
When we feel like we can't show our authentic state. Ooh, there's a lot going on in that one. Well, we don't, how do we get back to our authentic state? We don't feel like we can show it. So have you lost it? So authenticity, and I don't like the word, is because nobody really knows what it means. So authentic. What authenticity means is that you say and do the things you actually believe. That's it. That's all it means. So if she's saying when you don't feel like you can show it, that means whether she's choosing or she feels pressure to not say and do the things she actually believes, right? This is what she means by being inauthentic. So how do you reclaim your authenticity? Well, the easiest way, knowing your why is an advanced way, let's be honest, right? Because you can do it without knowing your why. The best way to do it is, I'll go back to that sense of camaraderie and friendship, which is you have to have someone in your corner who loves you, who knows you for who you are, who loves you for who you are, and wants you to be who you are. And you need someone in your corner who says, you got this. Be yourself, right? I love you. So I think the thing to do is, Brene Brown talks about this, which is we don't build trust by we don't build trust by offering help to others. We build trust by asking for help from others. And so it takes much more courage to say to somebody, I need help, versus how can I help you? And I think sometimes we say, how can I help you, when what we really mean is, I need help. And this is my story. I lost my passion and I was in a dark place and I was very inauthentic. And I was trying to portray a role that wasn't me, of successful entrepreneur, when I was a failing entrepreneur. And a friend came to me and said, I'm worried about you. So she opened the door, and thank goodness I stepped through it and said, I need your help. And I came clean. And it took a huge weight off my shoulders, and all the energy that I was using, lying, hiding, and faking, which is what we're doing when we're being inauthentic, I could now invest that energy in finding a solution. The solution I found was this thing called the why. So it was because of a friend that my life was changed and saved, not because of me. Not because of me. My genius was in my friend. So I don't take any credit for it. So it's the same thing. You know, there's something, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with folks in the military, and they do things very differently to us. I've hugged more people in uniform than I have in suits. I've cried with more people in uniform than I've cried with in suits. I've stood in audiences and listened to officers give a briefing that I've cried at. I've never cried when a CEO gave a speech. We have colleagues and co-workers, they have brothers and sisters. It is a different relationship, right? And I remember I had an experience where I was on a stage talking to a group of senior officers in the Air Force, and I told a very, very difficult story for the first time. And I choked up, and I couldn't go on. You know, you get to that point where you know if you go on, you're going to lose it, so you just don't go on. And you just hold it, you know. You just don't, because you know if you say one more word, you'll blubber. And so you don't. And in the private sector, I know what they do. They say, don't worry. They say, take a minute, right? That's what they do in the private sector. I heard 2 words come from a general in the audience. He said, go on. Very different instruction. He didn't say take your time. He didn't say take a moment. He didn't say compose yourself. He said, you're in a very, very, very safe space here. Right? He said, go on. That's all I heard. And so I went on. And I cried. It was good. So what we need is when we hold back for fear or concern that we're going to cry or that we may accidentally reveal ourselves, that instead of saying to somebody, take your time, have a moment, when you're ready, instead we say to them, go on. That stuck with me. Want to do another Facebook question?
Yeah, I was going to say, here we go.
Yeah.
So Keshav's question is this, and then I think we can spin it to relate to the arts.
Sure.
He says, thoughts on the retail industry. How can leaders and companies disrupt that space? And so are there similarities between the arts and the retail space, and how can artists disrupt?
Yeah, if we go back to my homeless example, everybody's selling something to somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, it's all the same, right? I think in the retail industry, if we try and link it back to the arts, there are I'll put it this way. There is a refusal to compete. Here's what I mean. Any participant in any industry can get lazy when there is little change in how that industry operates. And then when there's a sudden change to how the industry operates, everybody gets angry, panics, and points a finger. I'll give you an example. Okay? I'll give you 2 examples. Example number 1. Taxi companies around the world hate Uber. Right? Now, here's the reality. The app that calls a car, not proprietary. You can call a taxi with an app. Right? Paying with your phone, not proprietary. Any taxi can do that as well. The reason Uber is eating taxi companies for lunch is because it's a better product. And the taxi companies around the world could have a shitty product because you're the only game in town and we had no choice. And now you have a competitor, and instead of competing, you're getting angry. I would gladly take more cabs than call services if I got in the cab and he said hi and it was clean and I had a nice chat with him and he wasn't on the phone and he wasn't smoking and all of these things and I had some leg room. I'd gladly. It has nothing to do with the app, the pay mechanism. It has to do with the fact that Juno and Lyft are just better. It's just a better experience, better product. That's why I take them. It costs $1 more. Whatever, I'll pay for it. It's not even a price thing. I have no idea if it's cheaper or more expensive. I actually have never compared. The same goes for Starbucks, right? So there was a lot of people hate Starbucks because they put mom and pops out of business, right? The reality is the complete opposite. That when Starbucks moves into a neighborhood, mom and pops coffee shops actually do better for 2 reasons. One, Starbucks attracts more customers, so there's just more people. And the second reason is there is a groundswell of giving back to the local, and so more people go to the mom and pop, right? The ones that go out of business are the ones that refuse to compete. I'll give you a real life example. This goes back a few years. A real life example. I'm lactose intolerant, right? So I don't have milk in my coffee. And there was a time where it wasn't a foregone conclusion that every coffee shop had soy milk or almond milk or something. So I would always go into the mom and pop that was across the street from Starbucks, always go into the mom and pop and I'd say, do you guys have any soy milk? And they go, nope. I go like, thank you. And I would walk out. Those went out of business because I went to Starbucks. He's right, I went to Starbucks. Now, had Starbucks moved in and they went across the street and said, let's see what Starbucks has, we should offer soy milk. Maybe it's time for us to replace this ripped couch that we've had for 15 years because it's really nice across there and it's really gross here. It's the ones who got angry and refused to compete that went out of business. I think retail's the same. Everybody's pointing fingers instead of saying, we've had it really good for a bunch of years. And the question is now, what is our competitor revealing about our own weaknesses that we can learn to improve? Because that's what competition does. Competition reveals your weaknesses to you. And when you had no competition, you didn't know where you were weak. This is the problem with being the best at anything. Because you don't know where your faults are, and then somebody undermines you because they can see your faults before you can. We'll do one more Facebook question, and then we'll do some more in here, and then we probably should wind down.
This is Jackie. She says, this is a good question. How do you stay inspired while doing all the parts of your work that are tedious and not creative?
How do you stay inspired when doing all the parts of your work that are tedious and not inspiring?
Not creative. Not
creative, sorry. How do you stay inspired when you're doing all the parts of your work that are tedious and not creative? Okay, the answer is, do you know how, it's like raising children, okay? Having children is awful. Don't try and convince me otherwise. Have you seen what your apartment looks like? Have you seen what your house looks like? Your definition of dinner is eating macaroni and cheese over the sink with a plastic spoon, right? If you have a back seat of a car, it's destroyed. You have kids that throw temper tantrums, and all you want to do is watch TV, but they don't want to go to bed. That's your life, right? You have to travel at Christmas or summer, the most expensive and worst times to travel, because everybody's on vacation, because you have kids. You own a Honda Odyssey. You know? Did you have a poster of one of those on your wall when you were a kid? Was that your aspiration? The Lamborghini and the Honda Odyssey? You've got one. Right? It's freaking hard work and they're really annoying. And then they have problems and they're sick and they get bad grades and who knows what. So why would anybody have a child? It's for the unpredictable glimmers. When you catch your 5-year-old sharing with your 4-year-old. When you check to see that your kid is sleeping, you find them under the covers with a flashlight reading. The school play, the first girlfriend, the first boyfriend. It's the unpredictable glimmers that make all of the sacrifice worth it. And the same goes here. Creativity is not something that you get to have every day. If you did, you'd be jaded and it'd get boring. Right? You don't get that. Living a creative life means that you accept the tedium and you accept the mundane as part of the process of discovering the glimmers. And when you get those glimmers, all the tedium disappears. It was all worth it. You know? There's no such thing as a thrill a day. And when people seek it out, they die young, you know? It's just not a sustainable model. Asking for help helps somewhat. Delegating helps somewhat. Learning to say no to some things helps somewhat. But it's part of the deal. Relationships are the same. Relationships are really hard. But it's the glimmers. When someone makes you feel like you're the most special person on earth. When someone makes you feel that you're the better version of yourself because they're in your life. You know, you don't get that every day. You know? And that goes for friendships, that goes for that goes anything. Like every now and then I pull back and I look at my own friendships. And it's not a criticism of the people that are in my life that I call friends, it's a criticism of me. Which is, I have people in my life that I can absolutely say with absolute certainty that I'm a better version of myself because they're in my life. And if I lost them, I would lose a piece of me. There's without certainty, without a doubt, with absolute certainty. And I also have people in my life that if I look back at my friendship, I really haven't grown at all because they're in my life. And I spend time with them maybe because I don't like being alone and they were available. Or I spend time with them because they're funny and I like them. But if they disappeared, would I feel like a piece of me got lost? Probably not. And then I ask myself, because it's not a criticism of them, it's a criticism of me. I ask myself, am I investing time in the people that are helping me grow? Like, should I, because if I never called them, they'd never call me. Like, I know that too, you know? So, should I really have a few nights alone in order to save up time? You know, I don't have an answer for it, but these are the things I think about. Yeah. We'll do one more question. One more? One more, yes. You've been waiting so patiently, and you're from the right side of the room. The one question from the right side of the room. One question from the right side of the room. There's a lot on your shoulders. This better be a good question. It's the only question from the right side of the room, and it's the last question. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this exciting?
In my life right now, as well as I know other of my friends, there's this thing of change is happening, and it's also audition season, but there's just change that's happening, for better or for worse.
Just in a macro philosophical sense, change is happening?
But the question is like, how to find your balance in the midst of life, career, relation, like just in terms of that, does it all go back to your why and your tribe, like your group of friends?
So the question was, in a world of uncertainty, how do we stay balanced?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that the question? Right? I'll give you the same answer I've given 15 times today. You better have someone in your life who loves you. Now the harder question is, how do you have someone in your life who loves you? Okay? That's the harder question. And there's an answer to that too. You better be open to loving someone. All right, that's all I got.